Magdalene's blog 28. When he came back to the shrines, Marcellus was so passionate, completely unlike before. This time he swept me off my feet literally, into an embrace that took my breath away. There was no room for applying my training, but I didn't want to either. I became a willing participant in a flood of some release. And when he left, I think we both must have been glowing. It was another few days before he came back again. I was on tenterhooks every evening, and it was only the kindness of Bocker and Gaius that got me through, assuring me that I would not be assigned a different visitor. It was then I first realized that the southwestern gatehouse was where Bocker lived, had his home. The large gates, with their pillars of Adonis and Astarte, were only used at festival time. The smaller door next to them led into the shrine's anteroom, which was the entrance of Bocker's house as well. The wall next to his doorway had a large mural that was dominated by a raised relief portraying the cow image of the goddess Hathor, complete with the sun disk between her horns. The door to the outside was tended by either Gaius or Marius, who checked the visitors and took any weapons to look after for them. Then they passed on to Bocker and the priestess in charge, who received them together in front of Hathor. The priestess's duty was to know how many and who would likely be needed to attend the shrines, but when it came to the moment to decide for the visitor, she would defer to Bocker. When he came, Marcellus was more controlled, but still a passionate and welcome lover. Such a short time it seemed to me, though we must have passed an hour together, or even two. I wondered how things would go from here, but then I didn't see or hear from him for quite a few days. My heart was in turmoil, but I carried on all my duties, trying to let nothing show how much I was affected. But I did go out earlier than needed to the shrines, as much as anything to talk to Bocker, and Aiella came with me too sometimes. Together we would press him to tell us his life story. Then once again Marcellus called for me. Such a quick visit, full of ardour, but something seemed to be on his mind that I couldn't reach. Then nothing again for weeks. After 2 months I heard that Marcellus was away again with his legion. This did explain things, but I would have hoped that he could have found a quicker way to tell me. I was obviously presuming much too much. By then, Aiella and I had learned much about our tall, handsome eunuch, how he had born in a small village far to the south in Upper Egypt, and how even in his youth he had wanted to serve the goddess whom he knew as Hathor. He went to offer his service at the temple in Thebes, and it happened that the temple guardian, a huge old crocodile, had just died, which was to dramatically change Bocker's life forever. The priest took his arrival as a sign, and in a feast of welcome, Bocker became overcome with potent drink. When he awoke, he discovered they had cut his testicles off him. Distraught beyond belief, he next discovered they had fed them to the youngster crocodile that was now to be the temple guardian, and that he was supposed to be linked forever to that service. They fated him, but it made no difference. He was just angry and inconsolable. His new status did have certain rights, however, and he used these to travel from temple to temple, downstream and up again on the Nile, being received everywhere with some deference. In those temple visits, he learnt everything he could, especially about the goddess Hathor, who in his heart he still served. It was one of those trips to Memphis that Bocker met Mistress Astel, who was visiting Heliopolis in Memphis. He was assigned to guard over her, and it was her kindness to him that once again changed his life. For the first time, when being with her, he felt his status as a eunuch was almost a blessing. She was to travel back north to Byblos, and Bocker asked the Hierophant at Heliopolis if he could travel with her, both to guard her on the journey and to serve the goddess there, to learn more from them and their understanding of it all. To Bocca's surprise, the high priest gave his blessing, and so it was he came up north with Astel, first to Byblos, and later here to Antioch. And fate struck again, for they arrived here soon after the death of another temple guardian, a man called Tarif. Tarif was Maris's father, who was married to a senior priestess and who worked alongside Gaius for many years. He had a house in the street opposite the temple, where Marius still lived with a wife who was not a priestess, but worked with his mother as a seamstress. Bocca was welcomed warmly, and struck up an enduring friendship with Gaius, and for Bocca's part, he felt he had come home, to be able to serve Hathor through all the priestesses. Listening to his amazing story quite removed me from my own little trials, and I sensed that it was having quite an impact on Iella as well. In fact, she clearly seemed to be falling in love with Bocca, which was a marvel in itself. Then Sarita's baby was born, quite soon after the autumn rites, a beautiful little girl. And as her old temple friends, we were there to help, together with the temple's most skilled midwife.